It'll be fine. Guys, thanks for coming to our final installment of the Law and Flash series sponsored by the Young Lawyers Division. And today we wanted to do a panel discussion on the practical logistics of starting your own law firm. I know that being here at Jones Waldo, there's so many issues that I just never have to even touch or deal with. But if I were going to strike out on my own, there would certainly be a lot of things I would want to know, and I would love some advice from attorneys who had actually started their own law firm. So our thanks to the panel members for agreeing to join us today, and we'll go ahead and kind of get started. We just had a few, Gabe and I had brainstormed a few questions that we thought would be most relevant in this discussion, and so this can be informal, but we wanted to kind of go through a series of questions that we thought would be most important. So the first thing to throw out in terms of, just nuts and bolts of actually forming your law practice and what that required, of course, with the state and what forms needed to be filed, etc. Anyone want to talk about it?
Super easy. It takes about an hour. So basically what you need to do is go to the Utah Department of Commerce website, Corporations Division. You can just do it all online. And like I said, it takes about an hour. There's a filing fee. The toughest part is, I guess, choosing which type of entity to form. Most people choose the LLC, the PLLC, Professional Limited Liability Company. That's probably the best for attorneys. As I'm sure recall from your ethics, it doesn't protect you from malpractice at all. But for tax purposes, it gives you a little bit of break there. And then other than that, you just got to get your city license. If you're practicing in Salt Lake, just go down to the city and county building. It's like $130. And they're actually the strictest, so they will come by and check out your place and make sure everything's up to code and all that. So you just file for that. It doesn't take very long, and it's really simple to do. But like I said, you just got to decide what type of entity to form. We have a PLLC for state purposes and an S corp for federal purposes, which gives us an additional tax break on the federal stuff. So just consult your accountant. But I think that's usually the best type of entity for a law firm.
I think one of the things missing on that sheet, now that you just asked that, is stuff dealing with accounting and tax, stuff like that. And obviously, if you're a tax attorney, maybe you're a little bit smarter about those things, but I have no clue about them, and I didn't want to learn. So my recommendation is don't beat yourself up or pound your head into your desk trying to figure out how to do something that you can just pay somebody else to do, like an accountant. I hired an accountant first thing, and I think it was a great choice. Because that actually assisted me in picking my business entity. So I don't have partners, so I just have an S corp, a PC. So
yeah, and I think under Utah law, the limited liability company, you can elect to be an S corp but stay under an LLC. So you get all the benefits, tax benefits, that you can remain an LLC. Any other input in regard to that question?
I would say same thing as Phil. Hire an accountant to do all your books. I mean, there's already so much stuff that you have to worry about doing, being on your own, and that's one less thing that you should be worrying about.
In regard to the formation of the law firm, are there any questions from anybody here? Okay. So moving on, in regard to, let's say, your client trust accounts versus operating accounts, how did you guys navigate setting those up?
it's even easier than Yossof's answer. I mean, just call a bank. They know how to do it. Say, I'm an attorney. I need an IOLTA account. I didn't even have to go into the bank. I had an existing checking account there, and they just set up the IOLTA for me, faxed me the form, I signed it, and sent it back. It's really easy.
I will recommend Zions Bank to you guys. They assign you an executive banker, and that's your person. You can email that person. We called once on a Saturday. It was New Year's Day on a Saturday. We called her at 1, and we just thought we'd leave a message. She called us right back like 5 minutes later. So we've been really pleased with Zions Bank and how they respond. But yeah, they just set it up for you. It's just a form.
And as far as keeping track of those different funds, do each of you have, let's say, an outsourced accountant that you're using to kind of keep track of funds? Are you somehow tracking funds on your own?
The IOLTA is a little scary because it's linked directly to the bar. So when you screw up an IOLTA, it goes right to the bar. So I handle all that myself just because I don't trust anybody else with it. So operating account, yeah, we can have a bookkeeper and accountant, but the IOLTA I do myself. Some of you may feel different, but I just think it's too important to mess around with. So I just take a little bit of time each day and just track it myself.
and I kind of do hybrid too. I keep track, I have QuickBooks, I just got from my laptop, so I keep track of all my money that comes in, all my money that goes out, and then at the end of the year, I just take it on a flash drive to my accountant and take in my checkbook, my register, he does his magic.
Yeah, I do the same. I manage my own IOLTA account, and then in my account, I just give him my bank statements, and I just email to him the statements, and then he puts them into whatever program, QuickBooks, and then he'll give me, if I need a profit loss statement, he'll give it to me. So that's why it's really important, I think, to have a good accountant.
Yeah.
And I'm a little opposite. I do all my own accounting, and I took time to learn it just because I didn't have the money at first to pay someone to do it. And by the time I did have the money to pay someone, I didn't trust anybody else to do my own accounting, so I do my own. And we kind of get into this in some of the later questions, but my recommendation would be get good software up front that you're going to use throughout the duration of your practice and learn it and become really familiar with it. Get trust account software. I just use QuickBooks still. I wish I would have got something that was specific to trust accounting up front, some legal oriented software, but I didn't. I just got QuickBooks and now I'm tied to it. Well, I mean, I can change, but I know it and I don't want to learn another program. So.
And you guys, I apologize, but I failed to have you guys introduce yourself and just state, I assume you're all practicing in Salt Lake, but you can just kind of tell us what areas of law you're primarily practicing in. So do you mind starting, Donald,
Sure.
and just introducing yourself?
Donald Reay. I graduated '07 and I've been practicing solo and then with a partner ever since. Do primarily family law, bankruptcy, and estate planning, and then litigation when the current clients need help. But that's about it.
I'm Linh Tran-Layton. I graduated in 2009, and I worked for a mid-sized firm for a little bit, and then I got laid off with the economy, and I never thought that I would go into my own practice ever, but I did, and I had initially partnered up with an attorney who I had met in law school. She had her own private practice, and then we ended up splitting up late last year, and I joined 2 other attorneys, and we're a 3-partner firm just in Salt Lake downtown, and we have a part-time assistant.
And what areas of law are you practicing?
Well, with my last partner, she did a lot of immigration, so I just fell into doing immigration work. So that's, the majority of my work is immigration, but I also do bankruptcy and family law.
Perfect, thank you.
I'm Yossof Sharifi. I graduated in '07. I'm a bit different, I think, than everybody else because I didn't want to be a lawyer and I hated law school. And I went to law school. I always consider myself a businessman. I've been starting businesses since I was 13. So I had an eye towards starting my own business when I graduated. I became a prosecutor though, just because I wanted, real world experience. Me and another prosecutor eventually left. We started our own firm. I think we each had 500 extra bucks, and that's all we had. So that's what we started our firm with, and we got the cheapest office space we could downtown. It was 500 bucks a month, and we didn't have any money left for furniture. Like all we could pay was our rent. So there was this old crappy desk in the space, and the manager's like, "I'll toss that for you." We're like, "No, that's a deal breaker. We need that desk." So my partner literally sat on one side of the desk, and I sat on the other, and we had no money, no clients. But I had a really good marketing plan, and I understood that marketing is everything in law. So now, 2.5 years later, we got 2 associates, several staff. We're hiring another full-time attorney soon, and beating away clients. So that marketing plan is really what helped us make it. And that's really, I had that vision, and I knew that was what was going to do it, and we believed in it and jumped and did it. So anyway, that's where we are now. And I primarily do criminal defense and personal injury. Our firm does several areas of law.
Perfect, Phil?
I'm Phil Wormdahl, and I practice in criminal defense pretty much exclusively. I emphasize my practice on doing DUI work. I graduated in 2009. When I started with a partner. We also sort of had an aggressive marketing plan. And we grew quite a bit over the year that I was with him, but my prerogative was sort of to stay lean and mean. I didn't want to work any more than I had to. I didn't want other people's salary to be contingent on how many hours I put in. So I split off and just solo now. And for me, like I said, just my personality, that works a little better. Not so much that I'm difficult to work with, but just that I guess I don't want the responsibilities of partners and employees and stuff like that. And that's kind of the appeal to me of doing solo. Be my own boss, but not only be the boss, but not have to worry about other people,
Perfect. So in terms of staff, and it sounds like obviously that varies with each of you, kind of the staff that you have, and a lot of people that I know that are practicing solo will kind of employ the help of family sometimes. But can you kind of just tell us as far as staff, as far as HR issues, paying wages, how you have handled that? If those of you that have kind of staff are paying wages.
Yeah, I'll start. I've had a number of different employees, and currently we have a secretary just that mans the front desk, and then we also have a paralegal that focus on just one of our practice areas. And when it comes to the employment side of it, I didn't actually, because I didn't hire an accountant, it was a pain to figure out how to figure out the paying all the taxes and setting up payroll and everything. But once it's in place, it's easy and takes care of itself. But
So you are doing it internally, you haven't outsourced it to like an HR
right, we just do it internally.
group, okay.
Yeah, same here. Again, our accountant does the payroll and everything, so it's nice. He just says this is how much you have to withhold in taxes. When you have an employee, you have to obviously pay employment taxes, workers' comp, things like that. So it can be expensive to have an employee, but it's also really important to have good employees, and they're kind of hard to find. So.
I have Paychecks handle everything, and they're great at it. They just call me. We do payroll on the 5th and 20th. They just call me and say how much. I have our employees submit their hours, and we just do it that way. The attorneys are obviously salaried. That's even easier. They just ask, is it the same? Takes me 5 minutes a month. Saves you the headache. They don't charge very much either. I think they charge $60 per pay period. It's $120 a month, so it's not very much at all.
That's exactly what I do. I use Paychecks to pay myself. They do all my quarterly reports. They do all my withholding. Same thing. I get an email that says how much money do you want, and I tell them.
So that's outsourced payroll services.
And then they put it in my account.
Perfect.
One more thing to add to that. I think that it's important to, when you're paying yourself, I think it's important that you actually have a paycheck written out to yourself versus just withdrawing money whenever. I think it can get messy with tax, for tax purposes, and you could get audited. So I have a consistent paycheck, on the 5th and 20th every month, just so it's nice and clean and there's no issues.
Yossof said it's cheap using Paychecks, and that's true, but I'm really cheap, so I only pay myself once a month. So I'll get paid Friday, and then I won't get paid again until the end of October. But again, that works for me, and if I wanted to change it, I could, but it's good for now.
See, sometimes I pay myself like 10 times a month, and sometimes I pay myself once every 2 months, depends on how much I've got sitting in my account.
I have consistent bills, so it works for me to do it that way. Like I pretty much know what my overhead's going to be every month. And I guess maybe something to think about is that during my first year of practice, that certainly wasn't the case. Overhead really fluctuated for me over my first year of practice. But now, I pretty much know, within $500 in a month what my overhead figure's going to be.
So speaking of overhead, talking about operating expenses for the firm, and how did you navigate all those issues? And initially, you've got to find an office space, you've got all these expenses that you've got to deal with. Did any of you get small business loans? How did you navigate some of those things?
I think it's actually pretty easy. Like I was terrified about doing it, but when it's all said and done, it's really not that tough. I mean, you don't need that much to be an attorney. I mean, get a desk and a computer and you're good to go. So, I mean, when we started our practice with my partner, we just used a credit card, and just paid it off, I think, like the next month, basically, with fee income. So it's not that tough, really, especially if you already have a laptop.
Like I said, we have $500 each. That's what we started with. So obviously doesn't take very much money.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't take too much money. I never took out a business loan. I had a little bit of money saved. Maybe like $2,000 saved. That's what I used. So.
Perfect.
If I didn't either, I'd just use credit cards. If I could go back, I'd go get a loan and do a ride. Like I would buy, this might get into further questions, but I'd get the right software. I'd set it up correctly up front so that I wasn't trying to figure it out all along the way like I did. So if I go back, I would definitely get a loan and, spend $10,000 up front and set everything up like you want it to be 5 years from now.
Yeah. So speaking of that, we were kind of going into this, but it is, I think, so much about the marketing and how are you going to get the clients in the door, and you've got to do that sooner rather than later in order to start covering those costs. But it sounds like, Yossof, you had a very specific marketing strategy, but what advice would you give young lawyers in regard to marketing?
Do a good job.
Yeah.
You can't beat your referral business.
Referrals are the best. Yeah. You can charge whatever you want on a referral. They'll pay it. So referrals are definitely the best if you do a good job. Other than that, this sounds a little weird, but the Mafia has the right approach to marketing. Their approach is basically try everything. We did everything. We did Spanish radio, we did the rap station, we did Yellow Pages, we did magazines, we set up little booths at like fairs. I mean, we tried everything and we found what really works and what really doesn't. So what worked? What was the best return on investment? Internet is king. Nothing matches internet. Internet's absolutely number one for us. Okay. And then referrals are probably number two. But it depends, I guess, on the field. I read a lot of research on law firm marketing. They said certain fields, believe it or not, are very adverse to marketing. Marketing, they found, like for example, corporate law actually has and I don't know if this works for you. It has almost a reverse effect. A lot of people that's kind of higher end clients. They don't like the marketing, especially cheesy ads and stuff like that. It works really, really well for divorce because people are looking for a divorce lawyer and they hear a radio ad and they go in. So divorce, they said, was really responsive, and it has been. Personal injury is hugely responsive to any form of marketing. It's a little difficult for that because you got the top 5 guys, the Siegfried and Jensens and the Robert J. DeBrides and all those guys. They kind of get the bulk of the cases. And then you're trying to get those clients that don't like those guys, that are they see those ads and they think they're cheesy. And so that's your market that you're trying to carve out. And you need to find what they're responsive to. What do those people want? Clearly the cheesy radio ads and the Yellow Pages don't work, so you want to find what works for them. So you really want to think about who your market is, who you're targeting, and then find a way to reach that specific market. So the first thing you need to decide is who is your client and what's he looking for? And then you kind of find your marketing. But almost regardless of who it is, internet is going to be number one.
And did you guys each hire like a web designer or someone to help you develop an internet marketing strategy?
We had no money, so we didn't hire anybody. Yeah. I learned everything myself, and that worked out really well for us because a lot of these guys, once we did have money and we started hiring these guys, some of them charged $4 or $5 grand a month, and we paid that just to see what they would do, and they didn't do anything better than we could. So it's a waste of money. I think. I know Phil, I know you guys hired somebody.
I'm opposite because like for me, I look at the opportunity cost and I think it's a waste of money for me to spend time doing something I'm bad at when I can build somebody to do something I'm better at. So I throw money at marketing. I say send me the copy so that I can make sure that it doesn't violate the rules of professional conduct, and then once I stamp it, do your thing.
A lot of people don't like doing it themselves. So it's not for everybody, but it definitely works for us. I like doing it all myself.
Yossof's going to start doing mine.
Yeah.
Outsourcing.
We hired a company to do our web stuff. I mean, none of us really know that stuff really well. I mean, there's a lot that goes into internet marketing. I agree that internet really is a big marketing tool, and it's that and then referrals are our biggest source. But I mean, our overhead, the most expensive thing is marketing. I mean, we spend a lot of money on it, and but you have to spend money to make money.
So I'm ironically a little different than all these guys. Again, I didn't spend any money on marketing. I never have. I've never actually done any marketing. Well, I mean, I have, but not the conventional marketing. So I got an Office Live Microsoft Office Live website. It's like $15 a year. Gives you, you know, whatever name you can find on the web that's available. It gives you a template for a website. So if you ever look at my website, it's pretty weak. I mean, I created it all myself. It's just a really user-friendly template. And then to get clients, I found an office with a bunch of seasoned attorneys and office with them. And then I went through the whole building and introduced myself to everyone, and then every week, consistently, pretty much the same time, I would show up to the different attorneys' offices and say, do you have any work? And I've been busier than I can handle ever since I started, just off of referrals from attorneys. There's a lot of really seasoned, good attorneys in town, and they have extra work. And if you show up and you're consistent and you do good work the first time you work for them, they're going to keep giving you work. They have extra work. So I've never advertised. I'm still busier than I can handle, and going forward, I think I need to do something on the advertising front, and I've purchased like 60 websites and never done anything with them. But I'm going to, but currently I'm too busy to deal with it, and it's just all from attorneys. So
I would echo that, not only for seasoned attorneys, but from peer attorneys. I hate to be pessimistic. If you don't already know this, it's too late for you to remedy. You need to be, nice, and you need to go to networking activities. And if everybody thinks that you're an ass in the legal community, I mean, that's a huge chunk of business that you're missing out on. So.
And this business is so much reliant on your reputation. Everybody remembers anything. His partner, when I was a prosecutor, did something a little bit jerky to me 4 years ago, and I still remember it. And if I ever go up against Abe in anything, I'm going to be such a jerk. So everybody remembers everything.
Everybody holds grudges.
Yeah. You got to be really nice. Don't be a jerk to anybody.
I think that's a great point. I know even within a law firm, we talk about internal marketing. Like sometimes you're just not on people's radar screens, and and I think it's uncomfortable for some attorneys to do. But this goes, to the wider legal community. But it's not that people don't even want to give you business or don't think that you're a good attorney, but sometimes you're just not on their radar screen. And so even here at the firm, I'm going to the different department head meetings and saying, hey, this is the kind of area of law that I'm focused on, this is what I'm doing, this is what I've been doing as of late. If you have any existing clients that need this type of work, I hope that you'll, obviously refer it to me, but sometimes people just don't know, and you've just got to, be the squeaky wheel. But I agree, going to a lot of these events within the legal community has a great ROI. So when you need assistance in a practice area, for example, here at a firm, if I am trying to do something, I'll pull up something in our database and pull up a form that I think I can work off of as a foundation, and it also helps me understand maybe what it is I'm trying to produce. But if I were on my own, that would be obviously not an option. So when you need assistance, whether it's some guidance in a practice area, an issue you've never come up against, whether it's some type of pleading or form that you have never created before, where do you turn to get assistance?
Well, one of the ways is, I know that various practice areas have listservs, that you're a member of, if you're a member of that section of law, yes. So like, for example, the American Immigration Lawyers Association, there's a Utah chapter, and so everyone's on a listserv, and if I have a question about something, I'll post it on the listserv and get responses. And then back to the whole networking thing, I think, getting to know other attorneys, especially seasoned attorneys who, you can turn to if you have a question. That's been my biggest source, I think, of when I need help, that's where I go, is I go to the attorneys who I've met before and who know what they're doing, and most of them are really nice and willing to help you out. They know you're a newer attorney, so that's usually what I've done.
Anybody else?
Pretty much the same. I mean, you just need to have, if you have a good network in place, you'll never be in trouble in terms of somebody to call for advice. I'm lucky. I get to office with a bunch of very seasoned attorneys who are in the same practice area that I'm with. They're very generous with their time in terms of explaining things to me or offering me pleadings when I need them. Also, when I was in law school, I interned at the prosecutor's office that Yossof was at. So, I have friends over there. I mean, I'm not above calling a prosecutor and saying, you know, what's the story with this? How would you do this? You know, or it's good to get perspective from both sides. I call Yossof sometimes. For my first driver's license hearing on a DUI, I called Yossof and said, hey, you know, this is what I'm expecting. Is this what I'm going to get? So don't underestimate the value of your peers. You don't have to, you know a hot shot in order to get an answer. A lot of the times you'd be surprised at how many people that are basically on the same level of experience that you're on have done, you know, what you're trying to do, and how easy it is to do something if you've just done it, you know, once.
Yeah. I would say there are so many bad attorneys out there. You know, I sit on an ethics committee at the bar, and I have lunch with those guys and hang out and hear their stories, and they're atrocious attorneys out there practicing. So you guys,
Yossof and I saw somebody in court the other day whose attorney had them plead guilty to something they weren't even charged with.
Yeah.
Wait a second.
Yeah. She was like, "What are we doing here?" And the
What do you
attorney's
mean
like,
he's pleading guilty?
he wasn't even charged with the crime. So there's so many atrocious attorneys out there. So you guys don't need to be scared. As long as you do your research, you treat people right, and you take responsibility for your mistakes, you'll be fine. So you've got nothing to be scared of.
A good resource too is the Utah courts. It has tons of information on tons of different practice areas. For example, I had an adoption issue that I couldn't find someone to give me a pleading on, and I've spent all night before trying to research something. The next day, run into someone that had the, you know, a template. And it's 10 minutes because they had the right template. But the courts have a ton of resources for pleadings, for different things. So I was doing an adoption anyway, and went to the courts, and they have a huge adoption packet for pro se adoptions, and it has anything you need in it. So even though I couldn't find it from a bunch of attorneys, the court has it for free.
That's a good point. I know here at the law firm, there have been several times where it's like we need something, and it's like, well, have you gone to the court website? And there'll be a link, and there'll be, you know, the sample form that will have everything that needs to be included in your pleading. So.
And if the judge scowls at you over the form of the pleading, then you can tell the judge that you got it on the court's website.
Which happens.
But I think that,
We've got to run.
yeah, Christy has my email address. If anybody has any questions specific to, you know, my philosophy, or as I've explained it, or criminal defense specifically for solo practice, email me. I'm more than happy to talk with you one-on-one or whatever, but I have to go.
Thanks for coming. Thanks for coming, Phil.
Yeah.
So, in terms of deciding what areas you're going to practice in, was it, I know that when you had mentioned that it was a lot of immigration laws because this person that you partnered up with was doing a lot of that, but was it a matter of kind of these areas of law that you knew, you could get in the door, or was there a specific reason why you decided to practice in the areas you're practicing in?
For criminal defense, there's a specific reason. I grew up in a really poor neighborhood, and I saw those guys, and I kind of saw the human aspect to people that are just labeled as criminals. And I also had an experience with my best friend who was 13. A bunch of football players robbed a store at our junior high. One of them looked like my best friend Andy. He was arrested. They got him to confess. They stuck him in a room, and they're like, all right, just confess and we'll let you go. And he's like, all right, I did it. So it took him like 4 months to figure out, but it like ruined his life basically at that point. And so from that, I kind of knew from that point on that I was going to, if I went to law school, this is what I was going to do as criminal work. So I didn't just accidentally fall into it. I knew this was kind of the area I wanted.
And as far as like the personal injuries and family
That's
law?
just money.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just,
yeah.
It's not particularly enjoyable. Like I don't do like high-end personal injury. I do like dog bites and car accidents and stuff like that. But it's rewarding. I mean, when you get a good settlement and the client is crying and just like, I have no money, thank you so much. I mean, it's pretty rewarding. So it is a good field for that kind of client. I like fields that have a lot of client interaction. I don't like corporate too much, or like bankruptcy. I don't feel like you really interact with your clients too much. I don't know it personally, but it seems like that way. So I like the client interaction. So I look for fields that have that.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on how you guys decided?
I took whatever I could get for a long time, and eventually just kind of pigeonholed itself into bankruptcy and family law issues, partly because of the economy. There's more of it out there right now. And, bankruptcy is a different animal, though. If you're going to take it on, don't take it lightly. because there's just so much to it, and the judges are not friendly if you make mistakes. Luckily, I externed in law school in the bankruptcy court, so I had a lot of friends there, and I had resources to go to. But even now, I'll run into things, and if I can't get a hold of those friends, I'm up all night trying to figure it out. So it's with me, it was just whatever I could get, and that's kind of what I practice. It's not what I intended to do. I didn't want to do divorce, but it pays the bills, and now I'm good at it. And, I get lots of referrals, and so I keep doing it.
Yeah, I would say the same. I mean, my other two partners now, they had done a lot of bankruptcy in the past, so I started doing bankruptcy. And then with family law, it was just, you know, like Donald was saying, just, you know, he kind of took what he could get, so.
Perfect. So, Gabe thought of a question in terms that I thought was really good, in terms of saying, what's been like the most difficult thing about starting your own firm? And then as a follow-up to that, what maybe has been the biggest surprise, something that you didn't even see beforehand that you thought, I wish I would have known this beforehand, maybe something that's been a surprise issue that's popped up?
I guess I didn't know that judges wouldn't follow the law sometimes, which really shocked me. I've had judges in chambers tell me, I know you're right about the law, but I'm not going to do that. That's not right. And that really throws you for a loop, because when you get out of law school, you're like, the law's the law. What? It says it right there. Judges and prosecutors don't always follow the law. Criminal defense attorneys don't always follow the law either. So that's something that really, really shocked me, that somebody who's sworn an oath to uphold the law doesn't, just because they don't feel that it's right. So that's something, if you're going to do criminal, you need to be a little prepared for. It happens.
As far as the most difficult thing, for me, it was coming out of law school, being a new attorney, and being a business owner. You know, you're trying to practice the law, learn it, and then, but then you're also trying to run a business and bring in clients, because they say that really you should, one, run a business and then practice law, because if you don't have any business, well, you can't practice law. So that was the most difficult thing for me, is being new at both things. Biggest surprise? For me, I would say that, like I said earlier, I never thought that I would go into practice on my own. I always thought I'd work for somebody. So I think the biggest surprise for me was that it can actually be done. It's stressful. You know, I'd be lying if I said it wasn't. And, you know, but I would say that's the biggest surprise, is that it can actually be done.
The biggest surprise for me was that law school teaches you nothing about practicing law. That really surprised me. The most difficult thing I've run into is me and my partner took a case. The guy had like 10 grand. He was willing to give us as a retainer, so we thought, you know, this is great. He explained the case. It seemed like a great case, so we took it, appeared, and then we made the mistake of taking it and filing an appearance before we looked at the docket. It was against a law firm in town that's just a pleadings machine. So we got into it, and we were buried in pleadings right off the bat. There was like, I think it was on the 120th pleading that had been filed when we took the case. It was a horrible case. We blew through the retainer. I mean, we made good money the first month, but that was it. The first 3 weeks we didn't sleep. It was awful, and it was way over our heads. So that was the most difficult thing, is taking cases where you get unexpected things, your retainer's not big enough, and the opposing parties got an unlimited supply of money to throw at their attorneys. That's the most difficult thing I've run into, and it's in a kind of in a litigation aspect of practicing, but you can run into it in other aspects too, where you get unexpected things. Like in law school, they always have these scenarios that are like, you know, way out there. You can't find any research on it. You think, you know, in practice, this is never going to happen. You're always going to be able to find stuff. I run into new things all the time where there's no case law. I cannot figure out how to do it. I'll spend a week on one issue that none of the attorneys I talk to know anything about. No one's ever run into it. So that's also a big surprise, is I run into things all the time that are new and unique, even to seasoned attorneys. And I didn't think that would happen. I thought it'd be more uncommon than it is. But.
So speaking of that, when you talk about researching, obviously, you know, Westlaw and Lexis are pretty expensive. But do you all have subscriptions, or do you use other resources as much as possible? What do you use for your legal research?
We use Google for everything. We have Google Calendar, all the Google Apps, and we use Google Scholar primarily for our research. We're thinking about maybe getting Westlaw, but it's been really unnecessary so far. Google Scholar is awesome. So if you're just starting out, that should be plenty sufficient.
We have a subscription to Westlaw Next. I mean, it's not obviously the unlimited access, but we have Westlaw Next.
Yeah, and I used the courts and the courts library for a long time in the law library, and then paid for Westlaw. I'm actually just canceling it because it's tons of overhead. It's as much as my rent, and
Yeah.
just don't use it enough. But law library takes forever, but it works.
In terms of like calendaring and keeping track of things, I mean, in a law firm, you're depending upon, you know, a whole lot of staff to kind of make sure that you're where you need to be and you're kind of constantly updated. How do you make sure that you're not missing deadlines, that everything's calendared correctly when you're in a small firm or by yourself?
You just gotta calendar it and then double check it. You're gonna miss stuff. It's gonna happen. There's no way. There's no way you can do it if you get busy enough. So it's gonna happen. You just gotta make sure that you take responsibility and remedy it afterwards. Most judges are pretty understanding, and so you miss a deadline, they file a motion to dismiss, and then you file whatever in response. And most judges are pretty cool with that. So they understand that you're gonna miss deadlines. It's gonna happen. But Google Calendar has been incredible for us. There's a Google Calendar backup utility, and you can actually download it to your desktop and set it on a recurring backup. So it'll back it up every night if you wanted to. So you'll always have that calendar with you. I have it on my iPad. I got it on my phone too. My phone literally beeps every time something's due. So you need something like that because you're just going to get so many deadlines. You're going to get overwhelmed if you don't have that kind of organization.
Any other methods that have been helpful?
I just use Google as well, the calendar, and just try to remember to calendar everything.
Yeah, I use Google and sync it with Outlook and back it up religiously and sync it with my phone. So I've got 3 reminders for everything I do.
Perfect. How about malpractice insurance? How was it getting that, and what's the cost?
We used a company that is it Aflac, I think, with a duck. That's the company we used. Yeah. So or AFCO, one of those guys. I just pay it once a year, and we don't even need to think about it. It's higher for some fields than others. Real estate and personal injury are really high. But like criminal defense, I mean, the standard is so high for them to prove malpractice, it's almost impossible. They essentially have to prove factual innocence to sue you for malpractice, so that's hard. We had one immigration attorney tell us immigration you don't need it for because if you screw up, they get deported. So, so there's some fields that might
their family?
Yeah, their family's still here, but yeah. So we haven't had too many problems with it. You got to be a little bit. I know Gabe's partner actually, or Phil's partner actually is getting sued for malpractice right now. He does bankruptcy, I think. So it seems like some fields it's just all over the place, but like criminal, it's like unheard of. So if you're going to do that, I wouldn't worry too much about it. But it's really cheap for criminal. You can probably get it for $600 to $900 a year. So.
It really depends on the practice area. Obviously, the areas that have higher liability is going to be more expensive. But it's not hard to get. Usually, whatever company you go with, they'll send you a form and ask you like, what percentage do you practice in these areas, and then based on that, they'll give you the cost. So I think for the 3 of us, we pay I would say, oh gosh, I think $1,500 a year, but we're up for renewal again, so I can't remember. But it's around there.
Okay.
Yeah, and if you're going to practice estate planning, your malpractice is going to be high. I did a lot of estate planning up front, and it was expensive enough that I didn't get it, and I still haven't got around to getting malpractice insurance because I filed bankruptcy for people and I had to do it. No, I'm just kidding. No, I really need to. It's been on my plate forever, and it's really easy to get. There's no excuse.
Yeah.
And hopefully I haven't made any mistakes already. someone's gonna sue for.
I don't think you need to worry too much about getting denied. Did you use the bar's recommendation?
I think I did when I first looked into it, yeah. Just
Yeah,
never followed
they're almost
through.
like a rubber stamp, so.
Yeah.
Like, they have a deal with the bar where they give you like a 15% discount or something, so.
Perfect. If you guys could do it all over again, I think you mentioned, maybe you get a small business loan and kind of do it right, get some essential things you felt would be imperative. But any other thing, if you could do it all over again, or what would you do differently, if anything?
When we had no money coming in, we took a lot of different types of cases that we didn't totally want to take, and I would not take those cases again. There's one in particular, stalking. Do not, if you're going to do criminal, do not take any stalking cases. The people are insane, and they will drive you crazy. It's potentially practice ruining. They'll call you, show up every day. You got to fight to get out of the cases. I have one right now that's literally more paperwork than our murder trials are. It's like 1,500 pages I got to go through. They're awful, and we took them because we were like hungry, and we were just, we really wanted any case we could get. But I would not take those types of cases again. If your gut tells you not to get somebody, you should probably follow that gut and not take that client. No amount of money is worth a bad client.
I'm going to second the follow your gut with clients, no matter how much they bring to the table. Referring back to that one case that I took, we felt funny about it, but there was a lot of money. We were desperate for work, and we've regretted it ever since. He owed us a lot more than he ever brought to the table. Follow your gut on stuff, and it'll sometimes you're wrong, but.
I would say I would look into going to overhead costs. I think that at this point we may have overpaid. We may be overpaying for some of our overhead costs. So I would go back and just look at different companies, just different options instead of just jumping in and paying a company when you may actually be overpaying for their services. So I would do that.
What about collections from your clients? Because obviously, once you get to collections, you've got all those different, laws that you've got to come up against as well. How do you guys deal with your collections if clients are past due?
This is a secret, but we never collect. So a collection suit against a client is an automatic bar complaint. They're going to bar complain you, and it's not worth the hassle for a couple $1,000 bucks. If they owe you like $100 grand, that's probably worth going after. But if it's a couple grand and you're going to get bar complained, it's probably not worth it. It's easier just to let it go.
I agree. I've never collected on a client before. Luckily, most of my clients have paid, and if they don't, you just withdraw. So, the hassle of trying to collect from filing a suit against a client to get money back, it just seems too much.
Mm-hmm.
I never tell my clients that, but I don't think it's worth the time.
Yeah, and it hikes your malpractice. One of the questions on most malpractice forms, because I've read a whole bunch lately, is do you sue your clients for collections, or do you send your clients' accounts to collections? And if you do, your malpractice goes up because it ups the chance you're going to get sued for malpractice if you're trying to collect against somebody. And I've never sued anyone or tried to collect. I tell people sometimes that I'm going to send it to collections and see if they can settle the account before I do, but I'm bluffing. I never have, never will.
I've given some good guilt trips.
Yeah.
I made an application, I thought we were cool, and they're like, yeah, I'm so sorry. So you'll have to be satisfied with the guilt trip. But yeah, don't send them to collections or get sued.
Most clients will pay, even if it's late, they'll pay. So, but you have to make sure, obviously, that you invoice them regularly and keep up on that.
And get a big retainer and withdraw if you're going to get buried in it. Get out. Like, keep a picture of your family on your desk. Look at them and say, do I want to spend time with this creep in front of me that's not paying me, or with my family? So that's what it comes down to.
What questions does anybody have here?
How do you set your prices? Or how did you first decide to set your prices?
There's a marketing technique for that. It's what airlines use. That's why the prices vary so much. So they've determined when
Yield management?
Exactly. So they've determined when, for example, business clients are going to buy. Most business clients want to come back the same day, so that's why you pay double the airfare to come back the same day. It's a type of price gouging, really. So that's one approach. You can do that. So if somebody drives up in a Mercedes and they're wearing a nice suit, you can charge them double if you wanted to. We don't do that because if clients are going to find out eventually. You know, they might run into somebody or have a friend you defended, and the friend's going to be like, really, you paid that much? I only paid this. And they're going to be really pissed. So we just set prices up front and just stick to those. And it depends what you want to do. If you want to undercut other lawyers, obviously you're going to charge cheaper. If you want to seem, like, it costs a lot to hire me, you charge more. Or you can call around, get an average, call like 5 firms, just average the 5 rates they choose for that type of case, and then just charge that. And you can just say, I just charge the average for in this valley.
You all kind of work in different areas of law. What's your policy? I know a lot of people, especially once they get a little bit bigger, do free consultations. I have some peers that say never do free consultations, always charge it front and get it.
We do free consultations on everything. They won't show up, a lot of the time if you don't. But one of the things is I know I'm a good salesman, so if I can get them in the door, I'm going to sign them up. I have very, very little, very few people that don't sign up once they actually come in. So I'm happy to give a free consultation. Give them your pitch, make them feel good, and they'll probably sign up. So, but don't give them too long. Give them like 20 minutes, and then at that point, be like, I got another appointment, I gotta go, whatever. But yeah, I do free consultations on everything.
I think it depends on the practice area. I mean, like, for example, bankruptcy, I don't think any bankruptcy attorneys charge for consultations. With immigration, some charge, some don't. I've kind of taken the middle approach where I just charge a very nominal fee. I know some immigration attorneys who charge 100-something for a consultation, and then again, like I said, some do free. So we've played around a lot with it as far as whether we charge or not, and for the most part, we don't charge for consultations. The only area that we charge is for immigration, but again, it's a very nominal fee.
Yeah, I don't charge either. On phone calls, I try to limit it to 10 minutes. Consultations to half an hour. It's really hard to do that, but you just gotta set it up beforehand. Don't wait till you're halfway into it to try to think to cut it off. Tell them beforehand. I've got something coming up, and you've always got something you can do, so you're not lying. I give hour, 2-hour consultations all the time because I'm a sap and people start talking and I keep talking. But I also, if I can get a client in my door, I rarely don't have them hire me, and that's a lot because I'm maybe good at BSing through my way through things. But if you know the practice area and you sound competent, people don't like to go look around. They're lazy and they'll hire you. In my opinion, I rarely have people leave and not hire me, and I don't think it's because I'm an amazing attorney or even a good salesman. I think it's because people are lazy.
What's been the most rewarding thing about starting your own firm?
No boss. Yeah, no boss is awesome. I love it. I hated working for other people ever since I was a kid. So yeah, you set your own hours when you don't have stuff to do. You go golfing, go hang out with your family. I mean, I love that part of it. And I could never go back to having a job, ever. So it's ruined me for that.
Yeah, I would say the same. It's nice to be your own boss. You want to come in 15 minutes later, it's not a big deal. If you need to take off in the middle of the day because you have an errand to run, it's fine. You just don't have to ask anybody to do anything. So.
And I guess I'd echo the same. Not having a boss is nice, but I rarely take time to do anything but work. And I think that's one of the disadvantages and I've talked to a lot of solo guys that don't feel this way, but I work a ton, and I've always got endless work that I can't catch up on, and that's a blessing and a curse. But sometimes I'd love to have a boss to give me work and only leave after 8 hours. But when you're your own boss and you've got work to do, you're not going to leave. There's no one else to do it. I mean, when you're solo and so the one advantage is not having a boss, but I think it balances itself. I mean, I'm never going to work for someone. There's no way I could now. And I think everyone I talk to that's a solo guy says the same thing. Once you've done it, it's really hard to work for somebody. but definitely it has its downsides. It's hard and there's no one to rely on, and I work 60 hours a week consistently or more, partly because I like moving.
What other questions? Anything else?
Yeah, you said when you set up your space, you set up space in a building that had a lot of attorneys. Did you just go through the phone book and choose a building specifically for that purpose, or?
I specifically looked for an office with seasoned attorneys, so try to find an office share, and there's always a lot of them available. And then I went into a couple of different ones and specifically asked the attorneys, are you going to have overflow work for me, and asked what they do, and waited until I found one that I thought was a good fit, and it was, and it worked out good.
How do you manage client expectations? Like making sure, I know some people give, their cell phone number, call me when you need me, and then they don't actually call you, and then there are others that they're calling all the time or contacting you all the time.
We don't give our cell phone number, but we defend drug dealers and murderers, so I don't want them having my cell phone calling me at home. So we give our cell phones to no one, and we make that very clear up front that when the courts are closed, there's nothing I can do. So you can reach me from 9 to 6. You can't reach me anytime after that. Most clients are cool and they understand. You tell them, give them a specific time that you'll call them back. I'll call you back within 24 hours. They've been great with that. Some of them don't understand and they'll be like, no, I want your cell phone. That's when you got to tell them, I'm not the attorney for you. Please go elsewhere. I send all my crazy clients to Phil. So.
I don't like giving my cell phone out to clients. You under-promise and over-deliver is my thing with clients. I never promise a client, oh, you're going to definitely be approved for this, or you'll definitely win. You be real and under-promise, over-deliver. So.
There's a, depending on the practice area you're in. So for example, with family law, you can tell them right up front, this is going to suck and there's no way you're going to be happy. And because no one's happy coming out of a divorce. Out of divorce, adoptions are awesome to do because everyone's happy. So for example, with divorce, I tell them right up front that this isn't going to be a good experience. You're not going to be happy. And then when it comes to like the expectations of they expect me to get something done by a certain time, under promise and over deliver is a good strategy to go by. And this kind of plays into setting up your practice. So I always get, my cell phone rings for anybody that calls me because I want to know who's calling when. And the clients that I know have specific issues, I'll answer it at 1 in the morning, I don't care. So I use a Google Voice number because when it's free, it's better than any software. I spent $200 a month on my phone system for a while and it didn't even compare to Google Voice. And Google Voice is free, and you can forward it to any phone you want. So it comes to my cell. When I call from my cell, if you have a smartphone, it calls from that number. But if I don't answer a phone call, I usually get back within 8 hours, 8 to 10 hours, whether it's a quick text or an email or something. So my clients, I never leave a client hanging for more than 24 hours. And so it's hard to do, and I think I work myself too hard because of it, but people are always really happy when they send me work, so it's a balance. It's worth it to me.
The bar did some interesting studies, actually, that I read a little while ago as to what the #1 cause of bar complaints were. What do you think it was? Yeah, lack of communication. And then they did studies on what people want in a lawyer. The #1 thing people said is likability. More than competence, more than experience, more than aggression, they said likability. So be likable, and I think you guys are going to do fine.
Any other? Oh, go ahead.
Question: have you ever had to deal with unhappy clients, and if so, what have you done?
Yeah, all the time. Yeah, especially the stalkers. So that we literally have a policy now. We no longer take stalking cases. When they call, I immediately just tell them no more. But yeah, when you get an unhappy client, you just ask them, what can I do to make this right? And they'll usually tell you. It usually has to do with money. So don't be afraid to give money back to an unhappy client. It's much easier than a bar complaint.
Any other suggestions?
I've never given any money back, luckily, but yeah, just apologize and be humble about it, and ask them what you can do to make it better. I mean, if you take that approach and you take the approach, I mean, unless you didn't screw up and they think you did, that maybe that's a little different. You shouldn't admit that something you didn't do, but just asking to make it better. I've never had anyone leave to. In fact, I've only had a couple people that were ever mad, and it was both their faults. But I don't think they left. I mean, I've never. I think if you're just apologetic and you ask what you can do to make it better, generally they don't even want anything, or if they want a little bit of money back or something, and do what you can. But you can make it better if you just try to be nice.
Yeah, it's a business, and a lot of lawyers don't realize that. A lot of the old timers think that the law is something above business, and I've never seen it as such. I've always seen it as the same as a service, like an electrician or a plumber or anything like that. So, you know, when you call a credit card company and you're mad, what do you want to hear on the other line? And that's exactly what your clients want to hear. So it's pretty simple to figure out. I mean, it is a business like anything else.
Customer service.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Can we have any of your email addresses for questions, or is that?
Sure. Yeah.
I'll forward you that. But thanks so much for coming and for adding such great value to the Young Lawyers Division and helping people really navigate all the logistics of starting up their own law firm. So thanks.